Hello, dear participants, dear speakers. I'm glad to see everyone who joined our meeting today. The topic of our today's panel discussion is elections in Taiwan, impact, consequences, and global prospects. First of all, I would like to present with great pleasure our dear speakers, Ihor Antonovich Lytvyn, extraordinary plenipotentiary ambassador of Ukraine in China from 1991 to 2001, and chairman of the board of Ukrainian and Chinese Strategic Partnership, Alina Hrytsenko, chief consultant of the National Institute of Strategic Research. Also, we have Yurii Poita in connection with us, head of the Asia-Pacific region section of the Center of the Army Convention and Disarmament Studies, the Asian sector of the New Geopolitics Research Network, Taipei. And my name is Oleksiy Feshchenko, moderator and analyst of the Public Diplomacy Foundation, and I will be moderating this event. So, in Taiwan, there were the presidents and parliament elections, and it's incredibly important for us to analyze those from the point of view of their impact and consequences to general political processes in the region and in the world in general. Please launch small presentation according to the results of the elections. So on the first slide, you can see the results of the president's voting. As we already know, the first place is Lytvyn, head of the Democratic Progressive Party, who got 40% of voices. The second position was taken by Yurii, and he got 33.5%. And the third position is Kevin Je, leader of relatively new political party that started its way since 2019, Taiwan National Party. And he's got 26.46% of voices. And also there was voting for the parliament. Regarding these results, there are some interesting moments. First of all, it's related to the fact that the party Kuomintang received 52 seats in the parliament. And the pro-president Democratic Progressive Party received 51 seats in the parliament, and correspondingly Taiwan National Party 68 seats. It's very interesting to analyze because we can see that the party did not receive the majority and the opposition has. So I think that the authorities will have to make some efforts in order to find some consensus in promoting their legislative initiatives. Now we switch to discussion. So please let us return to Mr. Yurii. Today's panel discussion will consist of 4 main blocks of questions that I will mention right now. The first one is impact of the results of elections to internal political situation of Taiwan. The second one, consequences of elections to relationship of Taiwan with continental China and the USA. Third question, reaction of international community to results of elections, global prospects of interaction. And actually, the fourth and final block is going to be the impact of results of elections to Russian and Ukrainian war. So, taking into account the fact that this issue is quite wide, we have 3 wonderful speakers. So, preliminarily, I would like to mention the timings so that we can manage to cover all the issues to the maximum as much as possible. Maybe we will have some additional discussions, but like from 7 to 9 minutes per answer in the average. So the first block, impact of results of elections to internal political situation of Taiwan. Taking into account that Mr. Yurii now is directly in Taiwan and he joined us online, if our colleagues and speakers don't mind, we will start from Mr. Yurii. Well, first of all, can you hear us okay? Do you see us? Is everything working? Great. Mr. Yurii, please tell us how in general the elections took place there. Where did you pay attention? Where are some new impact tools used So please tell us your opinion regarding this process in general. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this discussion. Well, what can we say right now? First of all, we know that Taiwan is a democratic state. We have democratic political regime here, and according to Index of Democracy, annual Index of Democracy, Taiwan is on the first position in Asia regarding the democracy and approximately in top 10 in the world. It means that elections, they are always competitive, tense, and they are characterized by serious and powerful political competition among different political forces, including with the help of various manipulations. This year, we had three political powers who were trying to come to power, so to say: Democratic Party of Taiwan, Democratic Progressive Party. The next candidate was Mr. Yurii from Communist Party, the oldest one that started in 1917, actually. And as a matter of fact, 50 years since 1950 till 2000, they had the monopoly to power on Taiwan. And then for 8 years, they've been since 2008 to 2016. And the third candidate, third political power that was present here this time, and they got significant number of voices, and they can impact the internal situation, is the People's Party of Taiwan and the candidate, Mr. Huang Zhe. So the programs were clear in general, and none of the political forces recognize that they are promoting in their activities joining the Chinese People's Republic, and also no one doubted their relationship with the USA. What are the differences? First of all, Democratic Party, they said that they won't state their independence because, as a matter of fact, Taiwan is an independent state, but in order to reduce the danger from the side of China, they need to build more powerful defense. Then there was mentioned that they also don't see claiming independence, but to reduce actually the danger from China, they need to continue the political dialogue, exchange their points of view, maybe something else, but without joining the China. And the People's Party, they are like white. The first one is green, the second is blue, and the third one is white. They also said that they won't join China, but they need to deepen economic relationship with China. So sociological studies, actually, they show that now we can see as a result. So what can we mention? What else can we mention? What happened on places? First of all, the approach, China's approach, was that it is better for any political force to come to force in Taiwan except for a democratic political party, no matter whether that's Kuomintang or People's Party. And approximately there were like three programs: the China's program, and their goals were like program maximum and program minimum. Program maximum was that both president and parliament are representatives of Kuomintang or other political forces. On the second place, it's at least like the president from Kuomintang or the People's Party, and the third is the majority in the parliament from Kuomintang. But we see that none of these tasks was performed. However, we see that there is a significant part because Democratic Progressive Party lost their majority in the parliament. What do we see here is that quite often what is in line with the rhetoric of Kuomintang, they said that Kuomintang is the political party of peace, and in this regard, they were trying to build their policy, and they were criticizing the Democratic Party, but they did not support Kuomintang. not to see the relationship with China. As for the United Front, if we look at that, this is a China strategy regarding uniting efforts of all the voices on the expert level of media, level of policy, and so on and so forth. For example, the expert environment was saying the same when we were in Singapore a few months ago on one of the conferences with the participation of Chinese representatives. It was the closed event, but representatives of the centers affiliated with the government, they said that support of peace in Taiwan with the government of Vice India will be very difficult. So thus they were trying actually to take off the responsibility for any military actions or any provocative actions in Taiwan with the Communist Party of China. And they also used the word like Lytvyn coming to power and President Mrs. Hao, it means double independence, what they said, like independence plus independence. But in Chinese language, independence has the same pronunciation as poison. So they were trying to show that it's kind of double poison when Lytvyn came to power. As for the results of Chinese impact, of course, it was powerful in different directions on business line and psychological pressure and cognitive war and social networks. But we can mention that this was a limited impact because sociology shows that Taiwan is against joining the People's Republic of China. Only 5 or 6% of population are ready to join the People's Republic of China, and 80% of population want to continue the so-called status quo. And the second result of sociological studies demonstrates or shows that also the Chinese narratives are of limited nature. 69% of the society of Taiwan, they disagree, let us say so, that Lytvyn's coming to power will lead to war, and 70% do not agree with the words of ex-president of Taiwan, Makanama, with the fact that they need to trust Xi Jinping. And this means that these elections are elections between peace and war. They did not become true. So we see the Democratic Progressive Party is the third time that they came to power. They've lost their majority. However, Huindan did not get the majority neither. So now they will fight for coalition in the parliament. Okay, I heard you, Mr. Yurii. Interesting beginning. We have a lot of space, so to say, to add some information in the process of our discussion. We will continue that. Mr. Ihor, in your opinion, please tell us how do you assess the results of elections in Taiwan in the context of perspective of their impact to political situation inside of the island. Do you hear me? Okay. So, actually, I agree with Mr. Yurii regarding the fact that nothing special shouldn't be expected right now because the population said that they want to have status quo. All the attempts of China to present the candidate from Democratic Progressive Party as like the one who is kind of like promoting war, like he is coming to power and then there will be war, it failed. And that should have been expected because as far as I know, up to 10% of population of Taiwan, and it was confirmed by Mr. Yurii right now, they are considering the opportunity to join the Chinese People's Republic of China. Well, actually, some may be surprised by the position of China regarding this party because in 1949, Kuomintang won and he had to escape to Taiwan. But at that time, both Mao Zedong and the other side, they were considering Taiwan as the part of Chinese, the country of China. Therefore, here, special disagreement because Kuomintang position and the present position of Democratic Party that won the president's election, and actually they keep at least the blocking package in the parliament, it doesn't differ. People of Taiwan, they are seeing Taiwan as formally independent. However, they are absolutely conscious. They are consciously sticking to the opinion that they need to cooperate with China even more. The exchange of continental China and Taiwan, these are dozens of billions of dollars. So the trade is pretty good, and we all know how Taiwan industry is dependent on this crazy, I would say, production of microchips produced on Taiwan. Well, actually, we can consider a few reasons why are we discussing this topic. People of Taiwan consider themselves to be people of Taiwan and not Chinese people. Even though it used to be a territory of China beginning with prehistoric times, since 12th century, that was a territory of Fujian province. Then there were periods when Portuguese people were there, and then different companies and so on and so forth. Then we are coming to the 19th century when there were these humiliating conditions for China, opium wars and other things. And it is clear that Taiwan is China, even though that Taiwanese people decided, and it happened historically, that they are seeing themselves as a separate Taiwan civilization, maybe even nation. Most of them are speaking Taiwanese, which is different from Chinese, from the main Chinese language. And that is why for Taiwan, both for Taiwan and for China, the best thing is to preserve the status quo status. Of course, there are some attempts of the management of People's Republic of China to get this historical necessity that was mentioned by Xi Jinping, that Taiwan has to join. But they are near. Why do you want to make the second Hong Kong? By the way, Hong Kong and the events that happened, they scared the population of Taiwan greatly and postponed, or they separated this phenomenon, or precedent in this case, attempts of Beijing to make Hong Kong independent, in spite of all the agreements that were there with Great Britain. Therefore, regarding the things that will happen in the nearest time, I agree with Mr. Yurii, nothing special shouldn't be expected, because there will be the corresponding discussion between the parties regarding solving some urgent internal issues. This is attitude to senior people, problems with energy, high cost for housing, and many, many other things. So as underlined by many experts, foreign experts, we can see the future under such an angle, so to say, or with such a focus. Coalitions on solving certain issues will be created, not the policy in general regarding this and that, but it's like we take this issue, and this issue, and we have to understand that this is a way of solving some urgent internal issues might be effective. Thank you very much. That's clear. That's a very good position. Miss Alina, we would like to finalize our first block with your opinion. Tell us, please, how do you see the further prospects of development of Taiwan's policies, taking into account the practical results of the elections? Hello. As far as I see, we will have full consensus today because I actually agree with the opinion of my colleagues that in the nearest time, no radical changes should be expected. There are some opportunities that they are minimal. And first of all, we see that there is some worldview among the political elite in Taiwan. And both Lytvyn and Ihor, they said that there is no necessity to make some radical steps towards changing the diplomatic situation because their republic is functioning as independent state and no additional steps for changing status quo are needed. This is also a demonstration of the worldview of local population because in the last 50 years we could see the new nation was born, Taiwanese. Because when we are talking about Taiwan, very often we forget that there are not only Chinese people who had to leave after the end of war, not just their posteriors, but also it was under the jurisdiction of Japan. We often forget such details, but actually there are a few various nations that live there, and they have their own language each, actually, and they identify themselves as Taiwanese. And we can see that from some social studies. If their parents or grandparents, they can still doubt and identify themselves like 50-50 as Taiwanese and Chinese. So now youth is having more clear identification. By the way, it's a philosophical issue of birth of nation, political nation, whether we can consider some like Northern Korea and Southern Korea as like separate nations, how different they are, because once it used to be the same nation and so on. What else was shown by elections? That more attention from the side of population, what I am observing, maybe Mr. Yurii will say that I'm wrong, but focus was not so much on external policy, but more on internal policy. And the fact that they could not get the majority in the parliament, it says that in terms of internal policy, they made a few mistakes, and the negative global economic situation was impacted. It was inflation, it was growth also of life expenditures and so on. So here the focus was more on internal issues. In some media, we can see some issues, but 8 years being with this force, it's a logical logical result that they want to have some new political power who can change some mistakes that were made, and also they are considering People's Republic of China as possible aggressor, even though that this possibility still exists. But most of foreign experts, in particular American experts, I've seen infographics today from the Center of Strategic International Studies, CSIS, they were publishing that the statistics that most experts are inclined to think that if China will make some radical steps, that it won't be the armed aggression, but it will be the blockade of the island or quarantine. So I think that now they are going to try to have dialogue with Taiwanese People's Party, they will concentrate on supporting stable relationship both with USA and Chinese People's Republic of China, because this island is still depending on stable economic connections. So as for the ideology and worldview among the parties, they have certain similar characteristics. But if you are talking about cooperation with China, indeed, here is certain difference to what scale the cooperation can be taken. Because Kuomintang, for example, is more inclined to expanding the scale of interaction with the People's Republic of China and reducing cooperation with the states. And DPP has different position. So as for external policy, then probably they will have status quo. And William, like he was saying that it will be the fourth step to support this dialogue with the USA and with they will support in military and technical field cooperation. And I think that they will focus more on diplomacy track. Also in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean, where Taiwan has the biggest diplomatic presence in the Caribbean basin, because recently they've lost their diplomatic connections with Nauru, and tomorrow the elections in Tuaru, and also there is a chance that diplomatic relationship will be broken for the benefit of the People's Republic of China. So they can take something like somehow they can just participate in this, but they will have to focus on their internal policy to realize what kind of mistakes they made, to think how do they do with the energy, because Taiwan for 90-something% is dependent on energy import from external suppliers, because in case if a PRC, People's Republic of China, will do some actions, they will have big problems with energy. So most probably they will be aiming at improving the mistakes and improving their popularity among the population. And this will be impacted also by understanding that non-radical steps will be made, nothing that could have caused some changes in Taiwan Strait. So with the stable dialogue, both with Beijing and Washington, they can do it. Thank you very much, Ms. Alina, for your answer. It's very interesting from the point of view of reliability of these consequences, that we will be able to come to consensus. So not to make the situation worse, I would like to add one thesis, like literally, because many media were focusing on that with their attention, that internal problems indeed are very serious, and especially young generation of Taiwanese people were mentioning that on the island the level of salaries is lower than in the region, and they were saying that the price for real estate is also quite high, and about the level of life. These are some social aspects that are impacting certain rhetoric positions that had the party which is at power and so on. Partially, you touched upon the topic of relationship of Taiwan with the USA. Our second block of questions is related to that, which is called consequences of elections to relationship of Taiwan with continental China and the USA, because what we've been seeing last year and the year before, that this configuration of political connections between among these three political subjects is quite specific. And now, in this sense, I would like to address Mr. Yurii. Tell us, please, in general, what kind of like public, or maybe you could even like not hear some other claims from the key parties regarding relationship of Taiwan with the USA and China. What is happening, taking into account your opportunities, what is happening in places, so to say? Thank you so much. I will be very brief. in this sense, in general, I agree, but on some issues, I think that the situation might differ a bit. So, in any case, this is how it looks like. First of all, if we see the economy, of course, it's very important because this is very important for political support of certain party. But if we look at the elections and peculiarities in elections, if these are local elections, that it's about economy, if these are some central national elections, then geopolitical factor plays an important role. And these are not just my observations, it's the accent that is made by our colleagues from Taiwan and from different analytical centers and so on and so forth regarding the fact that, I would like to say that the blockade is also the aggression act according to norms of international right. If we are talking about sea or marine blockade, then they will force them to capitulation, or it might be one of the signs of full-scale invasion. So the blockade is also incredibly serious situation, and taking into account even the fact that Taiwan is taking almost like 60% of production of chips and most modern chips in the world, and 80% of marine tradeways are via Taiwan, so the sea blockade will impact the world economy and Ukraine correspondingly. As for the fact what will happen next, I am confident that we will observe the status quo, that is, Taiwan won't make any provocative measures, so to say, but the Chinese Republic will continue their operations in gray zones when they will try with the help of invasion to cause some pressure, military pressure, psychological pressure to Taiwan. And we can see actually that the amount of these invasions and their scale on the issues that are being processed, it's not only about political pressure, it's also about getting prepared to military action. So, of course, the probability of big-scale war is really low, but it exists. According to assessment of our colleagues from Taiwan, the danger grows because the threat consists of three main components. The first one is the attempts of the enemy, possibilities, and good conditions for them. So the intentions, they were always present. They had no opportunity. They had no possibility. And now their possibilities, step by step, are coming to the moment when they can conduct the successful operation, of course with the risk, of course with some probability, but they are coming closer to that. So even in spite of the fact that in the nearest years we will observe status quo, but it can be changed, and to 2030, for example, the situation might be totally different. Regarding the People's Republic of China, I think that the same level of relationship that we observed in 2022, 2023, actually frozen political context, even though that they are showing now that they are open for the dialogue. I think that Chinese People's Republic of China, they won't hold the dialogue, and Taiwan side is not ready to do some steps regarding that. We have a hypothesis that they can make sure that the so-called peaceful steps for uniting with Taiwan, it's unlikely to happen, and all the signs show that it's impossible to achieve that. But if the hybrid ways do not work, then it's a preparation to conventional, some military ways of getting that, and their army is preparing to that. And also they are making some things in response. So I think that the conflict is probably that there will be no conflict or big conflict, but the probability of some military scenario from blockade to the aviation hits and before the full-scale invasion, this all grows step by step. Yeah, I heard your position, Mr. Yurii. Thank you very much for your answer. Next, in the context, we will analyze that, of course, and we will discuss that. Mr. Ihor, as we all know, we've discussed already certain tension in relationship of the People's Republic of China and others. So as for the leaders from the Democratic Progressive Party, is it possible that they will find some understanding in trying to solve these urgent issues? As for the urgent issues of internal nature, I mentioned my opinion already. I think there will be consensus because the issue of energy and other issues that I mentioned, they do need to be solved and they need consensus for that. So it will be there. As for relationship among the with the USA, of course, Taiwan for the USA is, the so-called irritating factor in order to keep the management of the People's Republic of China in tension. What do we have now? Some improvements in terms of relationship, political and economical, and other among the USA and People's Republic of China, especially after this meeting of Biden Xi Jinping in San Francisco. Of course, nobody's hoping that this will be continued smoothly. And now, when Anthony Blinken, State Secretary, he greeted the new president with a new position, and China didn't like that. They say, why are you violating your promises with not to support the relationship with Taiwan as we see as part of the People's Republic of China, and you are considering them also recognizing them. You can have trade, you can cooperate in terms of education, humanitarian sciences, or some other fields and so on, but don't do anything officially. But you are doing that, and that's done on purpose. You remember when ex-speaker Pelosi, she came to Taiwan, what kind of problems that caused? This continues. Well, they sent their delegation, the USA, and within the delegation there were ex-top managers of the administrations of different ex-presidents. This is causing some emotions from the People's Republic of China. And they say, do not touch official status. And this is also about Ukraine, because for many years we are trying, I don't mean all of us, but I personally was trying to make many steps in order to cooperation between Ukrainian and Taiwanese structures had good political nature, because we are considering Taiwan as an inevitable part. It's to establish inter-regional connections, and the idea was to make it so that Kyiv opened their representation in Taipei and Taipei and Kyiv. And this idea still exists. I will stop on that in more details later on, but what I want to mention is that if we will wait till the results of the elections in the USA, we then will be able to talk about some changes in relationship between the USA and People's Republic of China. Before that, I don't see any quick moves from the People's Republic of China, because this victory of the candidate from Democratic Progressive Party, it's offense for Chinese management. From the other side, well, in spite of what is happening in our army, and there's a lot of bad things happening, in spite of having our own agenda on normalization of situation in economy, Mr. Yurii was right, because he enumerated different factors: intention, readiness, and so on. But there is no readiness right now, because in order to Okay, you chose that, so we will show you. Wait, but you just started improving your relationship with the USA. You again have the dialogue in the military sphere that was interrupted because of sanctions and Li Shanfu. Now, Li Shanfu is not there, and they have the dialogue in the military field. Now they need to abandon all of that and to put all the efforts, including first of all, like military efforts, in order for Taiwan to become part of China. That's nonsense. No one will do that. Of course, we have to wait. We have to wait till the period, as I mentioned, when we will know the results of elections in the USA. And I'm confident that even after that, nothing special will happen, because in order to solve the internal problems and be absolutely ready to, like, okay, and to be able to use all the methods, economic and blockade, military, and so on and so forth, to return Taiwan, I see no prospects. It's not wise. Thank you very much, Mr. Ihor. That is, so we can just fix that during discussion, and know that as for now, before the elections in the USA, the status quo will remain, and next we will analyze when the elections will come, and it's a bit less than 1 year. Yeah, Miss Alina. Yeah, yeah, it's like some place for consideration. Tell us, please, in your video comment that you analyzed in the framework of results of elections in Taiwan, you said that the issue of the Chinese army going to Taiwan, it's exaggeration. And you said that in Xi Jinping's speech, the focus was more on internal issues of China, like the main thing for the Communist Party of China is stabilization of economy, geopolitical balance, and leveling the relationship of Chinese Republic with the USA. So Taiwan is not going to be in this potential military campaign. Is this factor going to change, taking into account the results of elections in Taiwan? Well, I'm inclined to think that the possibility of escalation of the situation in Taiwan Strait remains, but I think that in short-term perspective, for China, it's not beneficial to be the aggressor and to create the blockade or something else. It will be quite possible as like the answer, but taking into account that from the side of new Taiwan management, we heard that they don't want to change their status quo, so the possibility of escalation remains low for the nearest time. The situation can change indeed, and as it was mentioned already, they need some good obstacles, and China doesn't have that as of now. So to initiate as of today, it's not beneficial, and we have to take into account that decision makers, they are thinking rationally. So as of today, the solution, so to say, of their situation of the Taiwan issue, that won't change the situation in China, that has a serious internal problems of socioeconomic nature. This is growth of VAT and development of economy, growth of prices for real estate, and growth of some unemployment rate among young people, because the Communist Party of China, they are holding to that because they have growth of well-being and reducing of poverty, even though it's very hard to assess the progress in these directions, taking into account the censorship that has place there. But in this or other way, we still see that in the last dozen of years, economic development was quite progressive and quite good. And in addition to that escalation of relationship with the USA, we cannot say that it's a good factor for them. And in addition to that experience of Russian Federation, and they are not ready to get the answer in terms of sanctions that will be there, of course. Initiative aggression regarding Taiwan, because recently, I guess Bloomberg, they calculated that the war in Taiwan Strait will cost 20% of the world VAT, if I'm not mistaken. In numbers, that will be very significant. 10 trillions. Yeah, that's right, 10 trillions. I'm sorry. So, the initiative of aggression regarding Taiwan will cost too much. And today, they are not ready to that. That is, most probably, we will have to wait for some time for good, because they don't have any good conditions for themselves as of now. Maybe these that will happen one day, but what do we do in case if there is some type of aggression? We cannot talk about peaceful solution of that because of self-identification of population in Taiwan. They are not accepting the People's Republic of China as their motherland. The question is, what do they do with Taiwan further on? And if we hypothetically just imagine situation, some aggression with an aim to expand the jurisdiction of the People's Republic of China to Taiwan, we will see resistance of the population, and to force them again, how much that will cost to People's Republic of China. If we assess all the benefits and all the risks, then it's not too good for them as of today. But again, we have to take into account that decision makers, they are thinking rationally and they are putting their own interest on the first position. And at the same time, the possibility of escalation remains, just like right now NATO is considering one of the possible scenarios, war with Russia, and the possible war in Taiwanese Strait is also one of the possible scenarios. We can range that with the level of probability, like there will be some complicated issues. And as of today, this percentage is not high, and it was mentioned correctly that the situation with the USA now is unclear because we don't know who will remain in the White House or who will return to the White House. If that will be the Republican Party, then who that will be and what will be the opinion of the new or the old new president regarding the People's Republic of China and regarding Taiwan and so on. As for the Beijing, yes, returning Taiwan, it's like the gestalt, open gestalt they still have, but mostly they are worried regarding the strong connection with the USA and regarding their military and technological cooperation, because Americans are performing their obligations according to the documents. But from the point of view of Beijing, I think that there is still some thought that the USA can use Taiwan as a military base, or they can conduct some radio intelligence and so on. And the same as among the USA and Southern Korea, because they located in Southern Korea their systems, and that made the People's Republic of China historical, because they thought that it was against them and not against Northern Korea. However, it was actually against Northern Korea. So there was a lot of different scenarios, and each player, so to say, is assessing that according to their own worldview and some relationships with other countries and so on, and we have to range that according to the level of their probability. So okay, we will sum up this block and the key thesis. We have the status quo, at least till the elections, and the second aspect to fix to the maximum that the rational approach to solving this issue is not mentioned in the military action. So rationally, that won't be beneficial for any side as of today. Yeah, as of today. And indeed, there is the one main moment, the main correlation between the political actors, those who are making decisions, it has to correlate with the rational decision, because unfortunately these factors are not always the same. But it's about holding your hand on the just to stay focus. So we will switch to the third issue because we want to focus on the reaction of international community and the results of these elections and global perspectives of interaction. We touched upon that already, but we would like still to learn more about how this interaction can be formed and what are the models. Like, let us say so we want to no more substantial situation. So, Mr. Yurii, in your opinion, can you assess the reaction of international community to results of elections on Taiwan? What kind of reactions are there and how these reactions were perceived inside of the country? You, as a person who is in Taiwan, what positions, in your opinion, were more constructive and what had more like speculation, in your opinion, again? Thank you very much. To be honest, I did not really consider this issue. Maybe my colleagues will add something to the things that I will mention, but where I paid my attention is that unfortunately, what is important, like we've seen that the attention of the whole world was on the elections and the results of the elections, but we realized that some big change won't happen in their policy and they will continue with the status quo. So maybe there will be some small reconfigurations, but nothing more. The reaction of China, I guess the first reaction was like quite calm, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the elections in Taiwan is an internal issue of China. And after that, what is also interesting, the China mentioned that Democratic Progressive Party has no support from the majority of population, and this is also one of the elements how China is trying to form their narrative. The second action from the Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs, China was criticizing the countries who greeted elections of Taiwan or who greeted the new president, because they were trying to mobilize the countries where they have a good relationship or those countries who are dependent on China. And we see a range of names. I don't remember the exact number, but like 50 claims there were that they support the principle of United China that was mentioned already. And it's very interesting because as a rule, those were countries of global East. And we can also observe that global South is very important from the point of view of China's attempt to form the client-centered, maybe, like political situation. Some countries, after elections, they send official greetings, and that's about the countries that are still supporting diplomacy relationship with Taiwan. Some countries greeted them, but they did not mention the name of the new president. This is what was done by the EU, for example, and some greeted on the level of their ministries of foreign affairs, and that is also about Japan, Great Britain, and other countries. Czech Republic, for example, greeted them with the name of the winner. So as for some aspects, how the situation can happen further on, and regarding scenarios, I think that very good lesson that can be taken from here, a good approach, is to consider all the possible scenarios, to hope for the best, however, to be prepared to the worst. And this is what is done by Taiwan, because unfortunately we cannot assess how rational the thinking is in People's Republic of China. We don't have access to these political circles. We don't have access to their strategic calculations. We cannot understand what is within the interest of people. And unfortunately, we can mention that the situation is changing faster than earlier. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Yurii. We see your analytics. We see your observations. Mr. Ihor, there were relatively many exchanges, and it was said that some external powers are trying to impact the elections in Taiwan, like they were hoping for Kuomintang, like China will be together again, even though they were saying that it's about peace, it's about looking for some economic relationship and so on. How do you assess similar information regarding the impact, whether it was possible in general, and can these geopolitical issues impact the political parties that actually came to power? Well, the thought is that different sides, the Communist Party of China or administration of the USA, they were hoping that they will impact somehow the results of elections, but it did not come true. From one side, of course, this propaganda company that Beijing was having against the head from Democratic Progressive Party, what he mentioned about the war, if he will be elected, then there will be war and so on and so forth. This had no impact to the opinions of people who were voting. Most population, as it was mentioned already, they consider these elections from the point of view of solving their internal issues, and those who like Kuomintang and Democratic Party, these are elder people already, and they thought that these elections can cause some issues in international arena, and such steps as $345 million for weaponing and buying what was there in stock of the USA. These are some certain results. Here, you have the weapons and you should know that we will always help you. Well, of course, when the leader of one party and the leader of the other party publicly refuses to speak about their independence, because formally they are independent, this is the opinion of both candidates. In addition to that, it is better for us to have good relationship with the USA that is supporting us, and this allows us to think about peaceful existence together with China, continental China, or about dignity in defending our formal independence with the help of the USA. It had some impact. As you can see, we have 40% of Democratic candidate, 51 seat in the parliament. I don't think that here will be some big arguments in terms of forming the government and so on. As I mentioned already, they will solve some internal issues together. And taking Democrats to their side, they will try to do that. And we have certain impact from the military support, financial support from the USA. All the others, and I mean the European Union and even more countries of global South, they don't care what is happening. The main thing is that the things that are happening the Near East or in Europe, it ends with that we don't lose everything. If we have some prospects for $10 trillion if the war in the Strait starts, who needs that? Nobody. Therefore, my conclusion is still support of the USA gave bigger result than attempts to impact the results of elections and propaganda among population from People's Republic of China. I got that. Thank you very much for your position. Later on, we will sum up. Ms. Alina, can you please mention the key in your opinion? I will just duplicate because it's a big issue in general. Could you please mention your opinion regarding the key reactions of international community to elections? And do they impact the forming external policy of Taiwan? As it was mentioned already by Mr. Yurii, some countries, they greeted with mentioning the name of the winner, European Union in general, again, They said that they need to have the status quo. It's adequate reaction of most countries who do not want one more war on the other side of the world, even more that we have hot conflict in Eastern Europe. I mean, Russian-Ukrainian war. We have escalation of situation on the Near East. So, of course, escalation of situation, and it can be triggered by even something really seemingly small, the butterfly effect. So nobody is interested in that. And we can predict that escalation in Taiwan Strait, it will be not just a military conflict between the People's Republic of China and Taiwan, but more players will be involved, including the USA, and they are nuclear states, I would like to remind you. So yeah. Yeah, there might be no winner. Yeah, as a result, yes. So Taiwan is going to concentrate on supporting economic connections with regional states, in particular with Japan. They have very good cooperation, and representatives of Japan in the parliament, in particular, they are visiting Taiwan with delegations. So Taiwan has diplomatic relationship with Ukraine and even with Russia. Even though as a result of the elections, there was some quarrel with the representatives of Ministry of Foreign Affairs because they reacted to the comments of Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the results of the elections. So they will preserve some economic connections with the Near East, of course, because that is from where Taiwan is importing the energy sources and oil and products and so on, and then liquid gas and so on. So they will have economic connections. And again, attempts to just try to take the People's Republic of China out of economic arena. This is southern part, like small island countries in Caribbean basin. The thing is that very often is the issue of trade, because these are small states and the economy depends on external donors to a great extent. So they might break economic relationship with the Taiwan and then with the People's Republic of China. It depends on who is offering what. So as I mentioned, this is the issue of trade, but this is rational strategy from the point of view of these small island states that are really dependent on external factors, investments, and so on and so forth, including development of infrastructure, logistics, and fighting natural catastrophes and consequences, the environmental protection, especially when we are facing that the situation is globally, environmental situation is globally becoming worse and worse. So the thing is to support relationship with regional players and where possible, of course, to take the position of People's Republic of China on this front. So summing up the third block of our questions, of our issues, of our discussion, it can be summed up with the second one. Reactions are clear. They are in rational field mostly. And we illustrated the consequences. We illustrated readiness to have some constructive discussions from all the sides. First of all, among USA, China, and Taiwan. But again, I would like to finalize that nobody forgets about the butterfly effect, right? That is, as of now, everything's perfect, and we truly hope that this will be the discussion and consensus, but we never stop taking into account all the risks, because our life is really it really varies in a good sense. Block number 4, impact of results of elections to Russian and Ukrainian war. It seems from the first, at the first glance, it seems like where are we and where is Taiwan if you look at the map. However, I would like to learn the opinion of our dear speakers. So, nevertheless, how do you see these relations? It's not that much a question, but just share your thought regarding what is the attitude of Taiwanese people regarding the conflict in Ukraine, what is their position, and is that in line with the position of the USA or China, for example? Yeah, as it is not in line with the point of view of the People's Republic of China. I think it's more similar to the opinion of the USA. From my observations, the government of Taiwan and governmental structures, economic structures, journalists, and so on, of course, the full-scale invasion, it became a shock for Taiwan, and it became the wake-up call, that big war is possible in the world if there is a range of obstacles for that. Secondly, they made conclusion that economic dependency is not a guarantee to ensure peace. Third conclusion that was also made by Taiwan, that ideology and some ideological thoughts can weight more than rational economic interests. This has to be taken into account, and this has to be assessed. Risks, threats, they have to be assessed, taken into account that players might be not rational from our point of view. As for the governmental perception of the situation, they were always supporting Ukraine and judging Russian aggression. And I was approximately in 30 different events with the participation of many ministries, including Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including different analytical centers. And I guess the first phrase that is made by each high guest and speaker, the greeting word, they are saying that they are judging Russian aggression and they are supporting Ukraine in their fight for independence. In addition to economic support, Taiwan introduced sanctions against Russian Federation. We have to understand that Taiwan is one of the biggest producers of high technological products that is necessary for Russian Federation, and this demonstrates what is the attitude to this war from their authorities. In addition to that, they provided humanitarian support. In comparison with other countries, it's insignificant, but for Ukraine, any support is very important, and Ukraine is incredibly grateful for that. Taiwan is participating in rebuilding a range of different objects in Ukraine. In Bucha, for example, recently the mayor of Bucha came to Taiwan, and they also discussed the issue of humanitarian support from Taiwan and participation of Taiwan in rebuilding. In addition to that, Taiwan is interested in big rebuilding of Ukrainian economy, and we have to take that into account because there's a huge potential regarding some chips, regarding some digital things, industrial parks, forming the new highly technological economy with high added value, with smart cities and so on. As for safety structures and structures that are studied by political sciences and so on, the topic of lessons learned from Ukrainian and Russian war, it becomes a cliche, in these 2 years. I am seeing that in many discussions, in many studies, in many analytical and academic developments. What does it tell us? That in the mode 24/7, they are analyzing what is happening, they are learning these lessons, and they are just trying to align their internal and external policy in terms of applying strategy and tactics of information war, cognitive war, the so-called, and production of infrastructure. It was mentioned by Ms. Alina that they are really vulnerable in terms of import of energy, and they are mentioning that. And so the attitude, Taiwan's attitude to that is incredibly positive, but of course there are different opinions. They are more similar to Chinese opinion that Ukraine is guilty and we didn't have to provoke anybody and we didn't have to go to NATO, but probably this is the population who is more inclined to support the political party of China. Thank you very much, Mr. Yurii, for your answer. Interesting analytics, interesting answer. In this sense, I would like to address also Mr. Ihor. In your opinion, will the results of the elections in Taiwan impact the position and in general assessment of Ukrainian and Russian war? Well, I think that well, of course, because from the point of view of Beijing, they are looking at the realities. And Like, you cannot force the population to go and greet the occupants with flowers. See what's happening, like with the elections in Taiwan. So they understand that, okay, so the so-called Russian Federation started this war expecting that everything will happen in 3 days and the population will meet occupants with flowers. Nothing like that happened. And we are going soon to have the third year of war. And hope for the power of occupation from the side of the People's Republic of China, like historical inevitability, as Xi Jinping says, for this to happen, I think that there are no prospects for that. And if it is so, then why should we support Russia in this war against Ukraine further on? And why should we continue taking this way? Like, we are for both sides, for contacting them, let them be, and so on. I've mentioned that multiple times. Like, you remember what happened in 1939? 300,000 people gone in one moment. And you are calling this a conflict? What if we call the Beijing this issue as a crisis? What will be your point of view? I think that you will say that we have no kindness, no sympathy, and we are crazy people. The second component is, I would like to mention Mr. Yuri's words that we have humanitarian support from Taiwan, like 50 million, and we are establishing some contacts, because there is a mayor of Bucha, and before that there were other delegations to Taiwan, and they established some connections, and they will continue cooperation. And in general, we have a lot of, first of all, like people who like us in Taiwan, and secondly, historical reasons to consider Taiwan as good and nice partner. Do you know that we have among the honor doctors of the Kyiv National University named after Taras Shevchenko, we have 3 scientists from Taiwan. And do you know how many from the People's Republic of China? 1. And when I was chairman of the board of the Ukrainian-Chinese strategic partnership, I was on vacation. Fortunately, the vice president of Taiwan came, even though he came as a doctor of sciences to conference. There was a huge scandal and problems, and it was written in special protocol that was before the agreement on establishing a democratic relationship, that economic, humanitarian, and unofficial relations, they have the right for existence. They will be supported. Now I started speaking about the fact that there were attempts, and from my side as well, to promote the idea and to create the mission Taipei of Kyiv and Taipei, and mission of Taipei and Kyiv. But Chinese people with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and so on, they are reacting badly to all of that, and we can understand them to some extent. But wait, we have the agreements. Don't tell us that we cannot do the representation of the Trade Chamber of Ukraine in Taiwan. If you look at the statistics, just go to the official websites related with Taipei, and you will see that in Taipei, the accredited, a few dozens or even a bit more than 140 official representations and trade chambers of other countries in Taiwan. They can be in Taipei. They can be big Taipei. 71. Yeah, few dozens. Okay. And you are telling us that that will be bad if we just if we have our representatives there? So, what do I mean by all of that? In order for us to have the corresponding positive consequences for Ukraine position of the People's Republic of China, in Russian and Ukrainian war, we need, first of all, to work with Beijing. Thanks God, last year, we've got the ambassador. I met him in Beijing, and I started, in my context, using my context, I started taking him to see different people, so to say. But for 2.5 years, we didn't have our ambassador. And in Kazakhstan, we don't have ambassadors there. And it's like, okay, it's not that bad. Well, especially during the war, they help us. And again, Russia is overcoming sanctions because of Kazakhstan and so on. So we need to work with Beijing and to work in such a manner that it's clear that we want and we truly hope that the official opinion of Beijing will be changed. Recently, some of my colleagues wrote on Facebook, look, this scary attack to Kyiv, the 2nd, 9th, 13th, and so on, at least one embassy of ours, how they placed materials addressing the local public? None. What does it mean? That there are people who are sitting there, they don't get the orders because people think that they are conscious there themselves. Do you know how many correspondent points Ukrainian media are there in China? 0. Do you know 1? Mr. Yurii says 1, right? Yeah? We got Ukrinformed there already 1 year ago. Thanks God. Then I have outdated information about how many official representations of our companies are there in China. I remember statistics 5 years ago. It was 5 of them. Do we have representation of our trade chamber in Beijing? 0. No. Do we have trade and economic mission? No. Why? I will tell you why. Because since 2015, in the president's office, and back then it was the administration, there is a project of the president's decree on creating 20 trade representatives of Ukraine abroad, including the USA, Great Britain, France, China, and others, since 2015. That is, probably it's high time to consider it. And you know that in the Beijing, big role is played by trade and economic representatives of other states or representatives of the trade chambers and so on. We have 0 there, 0 there, and you know that 0 multiplied to 0 gives a big 0. So if we want China to change their position, we need to work with China, including these sympathies from Taiwan, and we have to make it so that our position regarding Taiwan, including the reaction to these elections, is absolutely adequate for Chinese management, Chinese authorities, and we need to work on that, and we will. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ihor. Indeed, it's a very good position, and in this sense, it's important to pay your attention to the fact that indeed we have lack of good communication. The example of one correspondent. Okay, just imagine if one correspondent from Ukraine for the whole China officially, right? How many are there from Russia? And what is the daily agenda? What are the information priorities? And what information is brought to Chinese people in the context of information war? And so that is why we see different statements that are not really, so to say, true about the events in Ukraine. We don't have this connection. We don't have this powerful result, but still we have to work on that. We have to see the problem and we have to find the tools, because you mentioned that properly. Like, it's also an indicator to some extent, because unfortunately almost for 2 years, even more than 2 years, we had no ambassador there. So that is, our ambassador appeared in April last year, if I'm not mistaken. He came in June to Beijing, beginning of summer. That is for a year. We've got war and we had no official ambassador. How do we build the communication, quick communication on the level of state management and so on? This also has to be mentioned. Yeah, I would like to add, because there were some plans that our Verkhovna Rada had to send the parliament delegation to Taipei with the head of the committee. Thanks God he didn't go there in order not to cause the negative reaction of Beijing. And he said that, you see, Taiwan is a friend of ours and China is not. How do you think, how in Beijing they will perceive such things? Or let me say it the other way. Zelensky, the president, he says on the conference, like, Xi Jinping is making decisions there, I'm making decisions here. Why should I talk to him? Like, let Mahal talk to him. How do you think? Does it bring our positions closer to each other? Is it causing more followers for us in Beijing? I don't think so. Well, yeah, it's an open question, as people say. Yeah, Ms. Alina, what is the official position of the newly elected President Lytvyn regarding the war in Ukraine? And in your opinion, this position in general, is it stable, or are there some factors that can impact this position? As far as I understand, Lytvyn is having the general position of his party that supported Ukraine, and they expressed support to Ukraine, and they judged the action of Russian authorities against Ukraine. So I did not find some separate points, his points about Ukraine, but as far as I understand, he is going to hold this line, and so to say, this opinion of the party, if it's possible to say so, and we can hope for continuation of cooperation with Taiwan and post-war rebuilding, their support and infrastructure, logistics, and so on. So regarding our further bilateral relationship, I think that Lytvyn position is going to be supported. That is, further on we will hear support of Ukraine and judging actions of Russian Federation, taking into account their conflict with the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs recently. And we have also a group of friendship, if I'm not mistaken, in the parliament, and they are periodically visiting the island. So stable economic relationship is something that is in line also with the official policy of Ukraine regarding the China and policy of New China, and it does not contradict our views and our diplomatic position. Thank you very much, Ms. Alina. So we will sum up block number 4 in thesis. First of all, as we realized from the speakers, there are working an adequate relationship between Ukraine and Taiwan, more or less adequate understanding, even good and adequate understanding regarding Russian and Ukrainian war, right? That is, we see that there are some real steps from the point of view of economic projects, interaction, and so on and so forth. And in parallel, we are paying your attention to the fact that there are some tools of communication with official Beijing are being formed in the context of our understanding and looking for even more people who will share our opinion about the situation that happened in our country. So, dear colleagues, speakers, I have a summing up question. It's kind of an open question. So if you want, you can express your opinion in thesis or more widely. So, nevertheless, 1992, Ukraine, in the framework of policy, established diplomatic relationship with the People's Republic of China. Ukraine remains dedicated to the policy of China. 2011, a joint declaration about development of relationship of strategic partnership between Ukraine and People's Republic of China. According to these two agreements, of course, there are other agreements, but I would like to focus on these two. They are the main ones. So based on these agreements, how Ukraine, China, and Taiwan can develop their relationship right now, taking into account present geopolitical realities, how do we find common language in order to develop good mechanism of interaction among these parties? Yep, it's an open question, so please, Ms. Alina. Well, in spite of the fact that in 2011 we signed the agreement on strategic partnership, this partnership did not become strategic, and the problem is that, in my personal opinion, there is a hyper focus on the Western track, and we actually have finally such a result that other vectors of our policy had certain caps. So hyper-focus of external policy of Ukraine on the EU and transatlantic civilization, and the focus on Christian, it is called differently from clear reasons and understandable reasons, because we are belonging to this civilization. So the key attention is paid to this track. It is clear. However, at the same time, we could see certain neglect, of some other directions that were also very important. And one of the reasons why most countries of the global south did not mention open support of Ukraine from the beginning of the full-scale aggression. We did not work on these tracks as actively as it was needed. In addition to that, each country has own interests, and the countries are looking at that through the point of view of USA or other countries and so on. So during these almost 20 years, we should have paid more attention, not just to China, we have strategic partnership with, but also with other countries, Latin America, and so on and so forth. As for this triangle, my point of view is that preservation of status quo, preservation of our official policy with further economic connections with Taiwan will be most optimal external policy, because in the People's Republic of China, potentially as of today, maybe not yet, but potentially this economic addiction that Russian Federation is falling from the People's Republic of China. People's Republic of China can convert that into some political issues as well. An addiction of Russian Federation will grow, their addiction from China. And we, having stable dialogue with Beijing, we can use this further on. We can use this for our benefit. As of today, we don't have this critical addiction, so to say, or such addiction that something's bad, but it's not a single year, it's not 1 year, and so on. And all these tools for causing pressure from the condition Russia is in, it can be converted into political pressure, into some political reasons. So, in my opinion, our most acceptable policy in this issue is supporting political directions. We have some positive results from that, because China, in spite of their position regarding the war since 2014, they did not agree with the occupation of neither the Crimean nor Donetsk and Luhansk complex. They are actually judging that. So we have some positive result from this, actually. We can increase the scale of that to a global level, because China, they were mentioning that on diplomatic platforms, and the UN. Of course, the efficiency of UN is a separate issue, but still we can develop our relationship with other countries and with the People's Republic of China. And this as well. So we have to stick to our official policy with the further development of economic relationship with Taiwan, because it doesn't contradict actually this official policy, because at the end, Chinese people, they also have a relationship with Taiwan. Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Alina, for your position. Maybe somebody wants to add. Yeah, I would like to add, look, strategic partnership, it doesn't mean strategic partnership in everything. Strategic partnership with China, thanks to signed declaration in 2011, it brought them to the first place among our trade partners. Let us say so. The year of pandemics, 2020, it was almost $16 billion of the turnover, and I guess that here is the strategic part of our relationship. Regarding the fact that now our turnover reduced almost twice, it's because of war. It's also clear. Regarding the fact that we are not, in terms of implementation of our opportunities and development, strategic partnership with China, that's clear to everyone. There are tools and they are not used. Then, if we take Taiwan, in my opinion, our management of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ukraine in general, they had to agree with China that if we see Taiwan as an inevitable part of the People's Republic of China, we want to have there our ambassadors in the office of the trade chamber. Why not? Or something similar, in order to tell the People's Republic of China that we want to develop relationship with the province of China. Moreover, we can find the same province, some oblast in Ukraine that can establish partnership relationship. I'm not talking about something really big, but we can establish partnership relationship with Beijing, because China is supporting from their side different benefits for this interregional cooperation. Of course, we could have offered to Chinese people to open their place in the Crimea, because you don't recognize it as Russian and we do not recognize Taiwan as independent. But we have to work with that, So the prospects are huge. And the People's Republic of China, they need Ukrainian grain. And still, if you don't know, I will tell you, we still have no right to export our Ukrainian grain to China. Russia has the right. Others have rights, but not Ukraine. Neither flour nor grain. You know why it's still not available? Because nobody is working on that. That's it. So in order for the relationship of strategic partnership to be truly such as we can see, probably we need to bring at least some theoretical basis for that. We have some basics of external policy, and China is not mentioned as strategic partner there somehow. We have some basics of African policy, Western policy, but somehow Asian policy. We still have no strategy here, and that's question to National Institute of Strategic Studies. Have you seen this strategy? I haven't seen this strategy. Yeah, people say, but we don't have that. We have special representative in the Ministry of Internal Affairs and in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so the advisor on the African issues and some other issues, but not Chinese. So as for the trade partner, we don't need some issues to be regulated, like with Africa and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of questions. And in order for these questions to be answered, we need to work on it. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, if possible. And I can see that Mr. Yurii also would like to comment about that. Yeah, we also have to take into account the fact that we are aiming at Euro-Atlantic integration, so we have to take into account the point of view of partners to that, and also like the USA regarding this, like Taiwan Strait, and we have to take that into account when forming our external policy. Yeah, I would like to add, because what was mentioned by Ms. Alina, it brings me to a thought that the USA and European Union, they are with us in all of that, because last year the USA, they gave 775 turnover with the People's Republic of China. So then what kind of issues they might have with that? If the potential member of the EU will cooperate with China, it has to be welcomed, right? Yeah, thank you very much. It's very good thing that you added. Yeah, Mr. Yurii? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for very interesting thoughts. To be honest, I am more pessimistic to the possibility of development of a relationship with the Chinese Republic. I'm communicating more with our European analysts and Institute of Studies. It's the biggest center in Europe, which is making their expertise also for the European Union and so on, and also with other analytical centers. And as of now, the dominating position is that the change of positions of the Chinese People's Republic in short-term prospects regarding Russian and Ukrainian war, it seems that it's not really possible. Unfortunately, Ukraine has no tools for being in China. Of course, the ambassador is a very positive fact, but if we look at the dynamics and what happened during his being there, like in any case, there are no serious achievements due to certain reasons. If we look, for example, at the interview of the ambassador of Ukraine in the People's Republic of China, he recently, like a few months ago, he said that communication with China is very complicated. And he just begins to build the communication. Unfortunately, I don't know why the communication is so difficult. Maybe the Chinese part, they close the communication, and this is also the indicator. Regarding the NATO and the European Union, we have to understand that for the NATO and for the European Union, the China causes a certain danger for their values and so on. If we look at the declaration of 2022, and we have to take that into account because development of relationship with China is, of course, very important. However, we need to understand in what spheres should we develop that and where we should protect ourselves. If we would have some Chinese, for example, Chinese systems of observation on our bridges or infrastructure, then like it will be very easy to see the HIMARS dislocation, take into account their strategic partnership. We cannot understand, we won't be able to understand whether this information is in the access of Russian side. We have to understand the military and technical cooperation. I think that currently we stopped that, and it also has to be mentioned diplomatically, because if we are getting some weapons and some key technologies from Western partners, we have to protect those. And here 90 million annual or 70 million of trade with the People's Republic of China. It cannot be bigger than the support that we are receiving right now, that is now preserving actually the state of Ukraine. And I think that we should review Ukrainian and Chinese relationship, taking into account Russian and Chinese partnership, because 75% a group of Yermak. It was published a few months ago, and further, 75% of those that are in Russian rockets came from China. It doesn't mean that they were produced in China, but China became an element, the biggest actually, window for omitting sanctions for Russian Federation. Chinese government, of course, knows about that, but they did not introduce export control they should have had. We can discuss a lot about that. We can have a lot of discussions, but I think that we need to assess the opportunities, just like Ms. Alina mentioned, Mr. Ihor mentioned, and we need to assess the risks, taking into account geopolitical situation which exists as of now, and it will be developed. And we have to build such a strategy that will give an opportunity for Ukraine to use these opportunities at the same time to reduce existing risks and threats as much as possible. And regarding the Taiwan, I don't think that Taiwan will agree to the fact that we will open the consulate of Ukraine in the province of Taipei. So taking into account the realities, I don't think that it's possible. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Yurii. It's a very good thing that you added. What can we say? Summing up, we have to look for some tools to get access to China. Ms. Alina mentioned that, there is fixation of constitutional Euro-Atlantic integration. Mr. Ihor mentioned properly that Europeans, USA, they are having trade, they have connections, so we need to look for some way out of that. We are also a country with priorities, and in this sense, we have to go and find the balance so that from other side we are just holding the vector and we are defending our strengths. Summing up, I would like to mention that in the context of our discussion, we had such three words: status quo, butterfly effect, and rationality. So I think that these three fields will end up our main part of the discussion. So our main statements were regarding these three things, and these were the things that we have to pay attention to. First of all, taking into account the results of elections, reaction of international community, and maybe our further interactions from the point of view of economical and political cooperation. Dear speakers, dear listeners and viewers also, now we have a block of questions and answers. That is, everybody who wants, you can ask questions to our speakers, and hopefully our speakers will be able to answer. Do we have the microphone? Okay, just a second. Thank you very much, Yana Slisarchuk. So the question is, in the latest years, both USA and the main for us is Europe, they are trying to reduce their addiction from or their dependency on the Chinese market. So in case of Europe, they saw how they had to survive, that they stopped using some Chinese energy sources. So don't you think that now for Ukraine, like, yes, the new ambassador of Ukraine in China, that's cool, that's very good, and it's very bad that we did not have them for such a long time. But don't you think that talking about strengthening strategic partnership with China, especially for Ukraine, in terms of war with Russia, which is close to China, so to say, and with all their peaceful plans, is not pro-Ukrainian. So isn't that actually strategic benefit for us as a state? Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to answer this question? Yeah, I can try. The thing is that this relationship between Russia and China, they have to somehow direct us in our actions. Just imagine today's situation. So 75, 80, 90% of population of the Chinese People's Republic of China, they think that it's right that Russia attacked Ukraine because you go to NATO, you go to the USA, you want to be independent, and so on and so forth. But if we gave the relevant and true information to the population of China all the time, then it's impossible to have no consequences. I can say clearly that I have very many friends in China, and from the beginning of war, they are coming to me for the true information. I gave them this information, and after the Association of Sinologists of Ukraine, they made their input to this work, and they ensure information, the true information in Chinese for the population of People's Republic of China. If our authorities, not from time to time, they would like to organize the phone talk, phone discussion, or personal meeting with some authorities, or to explain that to our ambassador so that he establishes some contacts. I have it, and I am trying from time to time to use my connections, even though it's not even my level. We need to go to a normal official level, and then everything can be totally different. If People's Republic of China, they are repeating all the time that we have communication with both sides and that we are encouraging both sides to do that and so on and so forth. So why don't you encourage Russian side to take their troops from Ukraine and stop shelling some civil objects? So in order for them not to do that, we have to go to certain people, we have to speak about what is happening and why we as strategic partners have, from you strategic partners, such an attitude. You think they don't know about it? I think that they do know, but you know what? If somebody is not saying, like, listen, what are you doing? We are friends. Why do you do this to me? Then the other person will say just, oh, I don't know, and so on. But the elections in Taiwan are showing that there are no perspectives of solving that with a military way. So they have to, and even more, like the improvement of relationship with USA. Americans, by the way, at least officially, they said that they like the efficiency of the phone talk between our president and Xi Jinping, officially. And what they mention to each other, like one-to-one, like, it doesn't matter. But if we don't do anything, nothing will happen. I would like to add that the thing is that we are not talking about changing the vector or changing strategy or making the Ukrainian policy China-centered, so to say, but to work on our mistakes. That is partially today's position of the People's Republic of China in Ukraine is now they are trying to distance themselves, to kind of like they publish their peaceful plan and nothing else happens. But partially, these are results of this hyper-focus on tracks that we've been following for the last 30 years. Now we have to work on our mistakes, and we have to see everything that we did in the latest years. To use the butterfly effect, we want to get positive results of some insignificant things at the first glance. So maybe we need to ask that China stop supplying some technical things to Russia that they are using against us. Now, a few banks are refusing to work with Russian Federation. Again, it's a result of American policy. But as Mr. Yurii mentioned correctly, that in Ukraine now there is lack of tools of impact and expanding this impact. If we would have done some work on our mistakes, we would have attracted more attention to those who are using these weapons, because the Chinese Republic, they have much more tools for impacting that. And when now Japan is trying to do the trilateral summits and they are trying to pay attention to like the threats that exist there, yeah, the same question is like, do they know that they are like, how it's possible that they don't know about supplying the rockets? Yeah, and also we have such an understanding that Northern Korea is a Chinese like marionette, and they are like asking Xi Jinping before going to Vladivostok, but it's not like they have quite cool relationship. But the political situation is that for 80%, the People's Republic of China depends on that, and they have some tools for impacting. The issue is that we have to cooperate with with other countries, including the USA, because somehow, yeah, I know the focus of their attention on Ukraine and the Middle East, and like the People's Republic of China is somewhere at the end of this list with threats, and lately they've been paying quite little attention to this issue, and we can see that from like where China is included to solving this problem, for example. But again, to continue making their work on mistakes, not with like Russian Federation, but they are now together with the Russian Federation and they are using each other to solve some tactical issues. And I don't think that here we are talking about some strategic alliance, a partnership, and so on, because it's more like ad hoc partnership. But again, through China, we can push this topic. China knows. The question is whether we are interested in continuing impacting China and attract China's attention to that. Because, I mean, like, supply of technologies from Russia to China, they are not interested in that. And they didn't like that. They don't like this impact. So we have to look for it. We have to work on our mistakes. We have to find some joint interests and continue looking for tools and creating tools where we can impact China is a strategic task. It's not 1 or 2 years of work. Maybe even after Xi Jinping, we will be able to improve our relationship somehow. Yeah, and also in terms of working on mistakes, I would like us to mention such periods that, well, Chinese authorities were like, President Yushchenko, 5 years, for 5 years, he hadn't been in China, not a single time. President Poroshenko hadn't visited China, not a single time. Twice he met Xi Jinping in Washington and Dallas, but then there was, and again with the vice president. Just a second. In total, 1.5 hours in 5 years. President Zelensky, all his term, he didn't go there. Kuleba, when did he go to China? He didn't go there. Clinton, yeah, Miss Alina just reminded me. He went there like 3 days. Okay, it seems to me. Whom did he met? I won't recall it right now. How do you think how China, that has like ceremonies at the main something, what is their attitude? You don't go to us 10 years, we won't come to you 20 years. Last visit, 2011. Yanukovych twice went there, 2010, 2013. I was the captain of business team, both visits. Signed the agreement. Big agreement. And nobody could even dream about that. Where is it now? So after each visit, I will tell you how this kitchen works, so to say. There's the order of the administration of president to the cabinet of ministers to make plan, program for implementing the agreements. Cabinet of ministers is making this plan and is mentioning who has to do what and when. When did we have such a program? 2010? So we've got what we've got. We are doing nothing. So who doesn't let Kuleba now go to China or other profile minister in order to agree about this and that? Even more than Ms. Alina mentioned these components. Everybody knows about. 75% goes through China. So why don't we have a certain person on the position who can discuss that with the person on the similar position? Why don't we do that? Who knows? Yeah, in any case, thank you very much for your answer. I see that there were some more hands raised. Please, Ms. Alexandra. Yeah, hello, Alexandra Rashmadilova, analyst of and politologist. My question is as follows. The USA was focusing a certain deficit of microchips, and they started building their own plants in order to reduce certain dependency, so to say. And they said that chips will stop being chips. They will become expensive because everything that the USA does becomes more expensive. But they are reducing their dependency, and they don't want like what we've seen during pandemic times and like we have this addiction from the supply of anything. So on the level of the state programs, we said that we are going to actively build drones and other high technology products that we need for work who can help us. For example, Taiwan, the USA, China, we understand the prospects there already, but who we should take into account and where we should build a relationship in order to be able to speak that it will be real to create such production in Ukraine, because we can say anything, but if we don't have like some things that are supplied on the level of the state for the weapons or the industry, we won't be able to go anywhere from that point. So to say, we cannot just order drones on AliExpress, We know that any channel of communication is just put on hold and that's it. We've been talking about video cameras we cannot trust, but what about drones that we are collecting from the components that are coming? Like, yeah, we can trust that the information won't go anywhere. These are the issues for discussion, but if you have some opinions regarding that, I would like to hear that. Thank you very much, Ms. Alexandra. Who wants to answer? Nobody, actually, I guess. I can say just one thing to you. It's not that I am here something and so on. There are certain business circles who want to help Ukraine in China. But the issue is that all these attempts, they are controlled by Chinese government. And here in Ukraine, Chinese embassy. And that's clear. Recently, I invited the relevant businesses, quite big ones. They came in order to set up charitable activity here from Chinese business, including Hong Kong and maybe Taiwan. I'm not sure about it. Now, we are discussing that, including drone supply, because we are taking Chinese company that is procuring Chinese drones in China, and through this, it is coming to Ukraine. Here they are taking that for being armed. I won't say who is doing what because it's like ruining this, but it's a fact. There are such powers who want to help Ukraine, including with weapons, which is going to be formed, put together, and brought here, and it's a charity. That's how it is. Thank you very much for your answer. So please, next question. Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Yurii. Thank you, thank you. The floor is yours. Regarding drones, yeah, of course, the addiction is very big. Taking into account the amount of drones that are used, probably it won't become less. It will just be growing and growing. China, using this addiction, might have tools for war from this side. So, as a matter of fact, they, in some obstacles, they can reduce supplies and they can weaken Ukrainian defense. So, in Ukrainian national interest is to diversify all the supplies, take into account Ukrainian-Chinese strategic partnership. I would like to mention that in September last year, China introduced sanctions. These were export limitations, actually, not sanctions, for drones. So, of course, that's a serious challenge. Regarding the opportunity of diversification through Taiwan, I think it might happen with business lines, and I think that the prospects in this sense are quite serious and powerful because Taiwan has huge opportunities for production, a lot of industrial parks, high technology production, and it has all the elements, as a matter of fact, of the supply chain. It is not dependent on China on drone production if we organize that on the level B2B. I think that part of Ukrainian companies is already getting on a commercial basis certain chips, cameras, sensors, propellers, engines, and so on. So I think that it's important and we have to work on that intensely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Yurii. Yeah, if possible, it's for diversification. I would like to express the opinion that Southern Korea could play its role here. We had discussion yesterday with my colleagues from Southern Korea. They were very careful about all of that because there's a factor of Russian Federation and People's Republic of China and their participation. But we agreed with the opinion that supply of certain components and certain products, including drones via third powers, actually that will be possible. And officially, Southern Korea is concentrated on humanitarian support. But we have to take use of the moment while the conservators are the power and they have a good attitude to Ukraine and the elections in 2027 of the president, and there is big chance that Democrats will return, and Democrats, if there would have been Democrats with the power, we wouldn't be able to hope for this type of support that they are providing us, because this is like the first case when they are providing such a big support. And they also said that 500 billion investments they will put into this sector. They will build big cluster, and I think that it's quite possible. Yeah, can we hope for creating here in Ukraine the plant, so to say, like the trilateral plant, or maybe to diversify the supplies, or but create them here and not just wait for it. So theoretically, can we do that, or should we do that as one of the strategic directions? Yeah, I doubt that it will happen on the territory of Ukraine. It's more possible with NATO, because recently we had some launches in there, and now they have communication with the help of the USA to build certain like weaponing for Ukraine, the territory of Poland, because it's the territory of NATO. Taking into account cooperation of Poland and Republic of Korea, military and technical, that became more active when the conservators came to power, I think hypothetically we can discuss that on the territory of some countries, like Poland, for example, or a relationship that will be more stable than the period of other powers. Yeah, thank you very much for your answer. Thank you very much for your question, dear friends. Our time, unfortunately, is limited. I will ask one final, brief, and final question so that we fit into the timing to the microphone. Yep, and I will ask who wants to answer and see this. Yep, thank you very much. At first, I would like to thank both the hosts and dear speakers for having the opportunity to talk to you right now. And my name is Christina. I'm a student of international relationship. I have a thesis question, also very brief. If we set apart all the rational moments, the butterfly effect and status quo, if all the international rights are violated, if we have blockade and military invasion, what is the most possible option for development of events in Taiwan? Nuclear war. Yeah, very positive. Thank you. Yeah, I hope that we won't end on this note because we want some hope, Yeah, if we don't take into account the factor of rationality and we just assume that tomorrow in the morning they wake up and they think that this is high time, first of all, it's economic pressure to China. This is ruining global economy in general. Taiwan is separate. That will be not the least in this network, and potential armed conflict between the People's Republic of China and democratic countries, including with the participation of the USA. So some people think that the Third World War is happening, just not in the format as a Second World War. So potentially it will be worse than the Caribbean crisis, I think, because if we take the factor of irrationality, we do not set apart the butterfly because it might violate the norms of human rights in other countries. So if it's chaos, then it will be the chaos everywhere. If somebody is just not taking into account the rationality factor, then there will be some irrational factors for other countries, and all the frozen conflicts will just explode. Yeah, then the factor of irrationality comes up. Pandora's box. Thank you very much to everyone who participated in the discussion. Of course, you can also discuss that later on with our speakers. Thank you very much for your opinion to speakers. I think that our work was very fruitful and we found some key tendencies and key results. I hope that our panel discussion was interesting for our listeners and of course that it was useful. Thank you very much for your attention and see you.